Feed Additives, how the Innovative Feed Act supports modern livestock production practices. Today we'll have a trio of Eurofins experts expanding upon this topic. Those experts include Leo Schilling, the Laboratory Operations Manager at Eurofins Animal Labs, Senior Technical Expert for the Animal Health Market. Mike Evertson, he's the Inside Sales Manager with Eurofins Food Chemistry Testing. And finally, Carrie Nichols, the Vertical Business Development Director. She has a main focus on pet and animal nutrition. Okay, so that is my brief introduction. To begin, I'd like to just hand it right over to Mike to begin the presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. As he said, my name is Mike, kind of the inside sales guy at our Des Moines location. So we'll just go ahead and we'll dive right into things. Leo, if you want to kind of flip to the agenda slide, I'll kind of cover a little bit of what we're going to talk about in terms of main topics as well as what it might look like. So there's kind of three main frameworks that we're going to be looking at, kind of what the current regulatory stance is, what the Innovative Feed Act is in itself, as well as how the potential marketplace and supply chain could be impacted by the Innovative Feed Act. So we'll go ahead and get started with feed additives and kind of covering some foundational knowledge within it. So we'll start with kind of simply stating that the feed additives we're going to cover today are specifically non-medicated feed additives. And honestly, these functions really revolve around enhancing animal performance or supporting their overall health and wellness. It's important to note that the additives are not nutrients themselves, but rather they serve specific functional roles, which are kind of summarized in the slide. Nutritional additives obviously are going to help deliver key nutrients. They also might correct deficiencies in base diets, supporting growth, reproduction, and overall health of an animal. Our sensory additives really just encourage the feed to be eaten by the animals, really specifically improving the palatability and the appearance of the feed. When it comes to technological additives, their biggest role is just to enhance the physical or chemical properties of the feed. This would include like preservatives, emulsifiers, some antioxidants, just to improve the stability and shelf life of the said feed. And Carrie and Leo are going to kind of touch on the zootechnical additives as it kind of is expanded more so and defined in the Act itself. So that'll be touched on later in our presentation. So Leo, if you want to go ahead and take the ball and start talking about the current regulatory framework, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure, of course. Thanks, Mike. First, we're just going to talk about some basics. The purpose of the Innovative Feed Act is to foster economic development. It's also to promote innovation, and importantly, to ensure the safety and efficacy of novel feed ingredients by introducing a new regulatory pathway for zootechnical animal food substances, or ZAFs. The Act aims to streamline the approval process for this classification of substances. This will support a faster development and commercialization approval process for innovative feed ingredients, which will provide farmers with access to a wider range of options to enhance animal health and productivity. Additionally, the Act aims to ensure that human food safety is maintained by establishing clear regulations and standards for the evaluation and labeling of the feed ingredients. The Innovative Feed Act is a proposal for a streamlined process. Unfortunately, currently the framework in the U.S. requires all non-nutritive feed additives to be processed as animal drugs under the current FDA guidelines, which would require a new animal drug application or an abbreviated drug application or a conditional. And these pathways are rigorous and lengthy, and it's a long period of time is required for a commercialization process. For a new product under the current framework, like I said, the approval process begins with that application, and this application must be included, with the drug's composition, detailed information about the product, manufacturing and labeling, and all results from safety and efficacy studies. So for drugs used in food producing animals, also environmental impact assessments are also required. So this is a very lengthy process is kind of what it comes down to. And stemming from there, the next stage in this process is demonstrating the drug is safe for that target species with clear dosage instructions and warnings. So after approval, the drug undergoes post-market surveillance to monitor its performance in real-world conditions. There's also conditional approvals. Those offer a pathway for drugs that meet safety standards but haven't yet fully proven effectiveness. And these are especially useful for treating rare diseases in major species and for minor species, not so much relevant for production stock animals. But in these cases, the drug can be marketed for up to 5 years while the sponsor collects additional data. However, its full effectiveness isn't demonstrated by the deadline that approval is revoked. Finally, finishing up this sort of lengthier process, there is another final option for species that are too rare or diverse for traditional studies like zoo animals or ornamental animals or specialty animals. The FDA offers index listings. These allow legal marketing of unapproved drugs under strict conditions. Index drugs must carry a labeling requirements and cannot be used in food producing animals. So regardless of the pathway, the approval process framework for drug compounds is substantially longer due to the relative risks for the use of the product, whereas transitioning these approval pathways to one that's more like the Food Additive Petition will allow developers and producers to have access to innovative products that are already being used in competing agricultural markets. Next, Carrie is just going to be talking to us about how the Innovative Feed Act will be presented.
Yeah. So what is the Innovative Feed Act? I think Leo's touched on it maybe a little bit in his slides as some foreshadowing, but really I think what we're seeing here in the US market space is that we're acknowledging that our process is extremely cumbersome. Our current process for getting these particular ingredients into the marketplace is very cumbersome and time consuming for our ingredient manufacturers. So the folks that are putting in the effort to make these particular feed additives are having to spend a lot of time and energy to get them into the marketplace because they're considered as drugs. So with all of that being recognized, we introduced the Innovative Feed Act as a possibility in 2023. So the Innovative Feed Act, which longhand is called the Innovative Feed Enhancement and Economic Development Act, again shortened to Innovative Feed Act, really is stemming from the very outdated practices in the US for regulating specific animal food ingredients. The bill itself is very much so a bipartisan bill. It's got support from both sides of the aisle when we look at it politically. The act is really focused on additives that act in the animal's gut, so in our gastrointestinal tract of the animals consuming the products, and they're really focusing on providing health benefits to the animal, other functions like emissions reductions, or addressing human food safety concerns such as pathogen loads. The goal of the Innovative Feed Act really is to modernize the FDA's review process for specific feed ingredients, shifting away from the cumbersome animal drug review process that Leo previously described to a less costly, less time-consuming pathway. We would consider this to be more similar to a Food Additive Petition pathway, otherwise known as an FAP pathway of approval for these products. As previously mentioned, with the passing of the act, we've got a new class of additives. The act defines zootechnical animal food substances. This is our new class, otherwise known as ZAFs, shorthanded. ZAFs are still required to carry a label statement indicating that they're not intended to diagnose, cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent disease in animals, because again, these aren't going to be drugs under this new act. So we're moving away from classifying these things and regulating these things as drugs and looking at them as truly as feed ingredients that have benefits. So the functionality of ZAFs can be varied, but one thing remains true. These particular substances that we're looking at in this new category are only acting within the gastrointestinal tract of the animal consuming them. So again, they're only acting within the gut, whether that is by altering the microbiome or through other functions. They're only acting within that gastrointestinal tract. Some of the functions that they may have within that gastrointestinal tract, so they might be altering the byproducts of the digestive process, meaning, again, like a reduction in emissions such as methane or unnecessary nutrient excretion. We see a lot of problems with that, especially, I'm based here in Iowa. We have a lot of hogs, we have a lot of chickens, and that's something that our livestock producers and farmers are very cognizant of is, how much of these excess nutrients are coming out in the fecal material of these animals, and therefore something that they have to control and mitigate in their waste stream process. These particular ingredients, or again, ZAFs, can also assist in reducing the presence of pathogens that are harmful to humans. So they might do this through outcompeting the pathogens or also generally inhibiting the pathogen growth. A lot of species that we're consuming in the human food supply chain are, carrying pathogens inherently in their gastrointestinal tract. And so if we can help eliminate those things through adding these zootechnical feed additives, that's a win for everybody. And then additionally, ZAFs may also change an animal's gastrointestinal microbiome in ways that change the structure or the function of the animal's body. Examples of that would be increased nutrient absorption. So think about enzymes and the ability to, break particular nutrients down to allow them to be better absorbed into the animal's body.
Right. In the next section, we'll address potential impact of an increased presence of ZAFs in agricultural trade. The innovative and non-nutritive feed additives function in animal nutrition by boosting health, improving feed efficiency, reducing environmental impact, and these gains give us a new path for entering the marketplace. They're influencing everything from farm animal, productivity to global trade, and exploring the factors behind this shift, including regulatory management, cost, and consumer demand is key to benefiting from their use in the trade. The regulatory pathway outlined in the Innovative Feed Act introduces several key changes to the approval process of novel animal feed ingredients. Under the current system, non-nutritive animal food substances are subject to the same rigorous testing and evaluation processes as pharmaceutical drugs. This process involves extensive clinical trials and safety studies, which can be time-consuming and costly. The Feed Act, however, proposes a more streamlined approach with focusing on the safety and efficacy evaluation of these ingredients as additives rather than drugs. So this shift in perspective aims to speed up the approval process and also encourage innovation in the animal feed industry. So the proposed change here is, non-nutritive animal food substances as additives. So the Feed Act proposes this change in the categorization or recategorization, really, of non-nutritive animal food substances from drugs to additives. This change recognizes that these substances are primarily intended to enhance the nutritional value or performance of the animal feed rather than treat or prevent diseases like Carrie previously mentioned. By classifying those additives, the Feed Act aims to provide a more streamlined and efficient regulatory pathway for their approval. This change is expected to promote innovation in the animal feed industry by reducing regulatory barriers, and encouraging the development of novel feed ingredients. It will also hopefully facilitate the introduction of new technologies and scientific advancements in the field of animal nutrition. Finally, just focusing on the role of the FDA in regulating animal feed ingredients. The FDA does play a critical role in the regulation of animal feed ingredients in the U.S. They are responsible for ensuring the safety and efficacy of these ingredients, and for also enforcing the compliance with labeling requirements and reporting obligations through surveillance programs. Under the current regulatory framework, non-nutritive food substances are classified as animal drugs and are subject to thorough evaluation by the USDA. The agency assesses the safety of these substances through extensive testing, including safety and toxicology studies, metabolism, and residue depletion. The FDA also evaluates the efficacy of the animal feed ingredients to ensure that they deliver the intended benefits. So with the introduction of the Feed Act, the FDA's role in regulating these classifications of ingredients will hopefully evolve to accommodate the new regulatory pathway for non-nutritive animal food substances as additives. Finally, just going to be finishing up here this section with just talking about how enhancing the animal health can benefit the market with the introduction of new feed ingredients. So the Innovative Feed Act does seek to enhance this process through the development and use of novel feed ingredients by promoting a regulatory pathway that's specifically designed for this class of compounds. And the innovation can lead to the discovery of new ingredients that offer improved nutritional value, which can promote better growth and development and support overall health and well-being of livestock and other animals. So by facilitating the approval and use of these novel feed ingredients, the Feed Act aims to contribute to the advancement of animal health and the overall productivity and sustainability of the agricultural industry. Next, Carrie is going to just discuss with us how utilizing this process for product commercialization could influence global trade.
Yeah. So in the current state of review requirements, it's generally felt, I would say pretty widely, that U.S. producers are being left behind from the perspective that many of our ingredients that we're currently requiring to go through this long drug approval process, they're already being used in other countries. So other countries have access to these particular ingredient items to use in their rations or within their flocks and herds that our producers here in the US either don't have access to because they haven't been approved through the drug process, or have different requirements to utilize because they are considered drugs. The approval of the Innovative Feed Act really allows the US livestock production industry to get back on track in areas we're falling behind through access to new ingredient containing feed products. As we look forward, I think continuing to treat these products as drugs in the US really does limit innovation, as we are all aware based on all the commentary, and maybe some of you are ingredient manufacturers yourself, but it does limit innovation from a perspective of having to spend significantly more money and time to get things approved. But also I think that puts a constraint on allowing us to work on other projects or bring other materials to the marketplace. So really, again, the Innovative Feed Act, as Leo mentioned, and we've kind of seen the same theme through the presentation, is that allowing these materials to demonstrate that they are safe and effective, and go through a less costly, less time process really is going to open up the opportunities for those same ingredient manufacturers to work on other innovations that we need to continue to move us forward and continue to allow the United States to be a competitor in the global marketplace for animal production. allowing these ZAFs, so again, zootechnical animal food substances, to enter the marketplace under alternate pathways for submission, again, really is just going to help with animal husbandry as well as efficient production. The more direct method of submission to FDA allows for faster marketplace entry of new products. And again, I think we're seeing a huge shift in terms of environmental awareness and company requirements for those, and that's going to be a big support for the awareness and initiatives and that are at the forefront of most people's minds, whether you are involved in that within your company or just as a consumer. Sustainability, of course, means different things to different people, but it is very clear, at least to me, that ZAFs are going to be a component in continuing practices that reduce input requirements and also reduce waste output as well. Mike's going to talk about some additional supply chain impact items here for.
Yeah, I think it's important to touch on. Carrie and Leo have highlighted very well kind of the business impact that the apps can have, but for the ripple effect that can be transferred down to both the direct consumer, but then also the consumers within the supply chain as well are worth noting. And I think first and foremost with food safety, providing access to these potential additives that could reduce pathogens not only improve the front end of the supply chain in terms of their safety protocols and reducing liability, it also helps to be that frontline defense and protecting consumers directly at the end of the supply chain in that case. And I know Carrie touched on this with the sustainability potential. Having options like this available with a set of people that are becoming more eco-conscious in terms of purchasing preferences, not only does this act help that, but it also helps the consumer on the back end as well. And when it comes to, and both Carrie and Leo mentioned this kind of in depth, but when those regulatory pathways are streamlined, that also opens the door for potential stabilization and often maybe even a reduction in food retail prices for customers over time as well. And at the end of the day, these additives are meant to improve the animal welfare. Healthier animals means fewer losses, a better productivity from a producer standpoint, and that improves the consistency for both processors and retailers, which then in terms is an added benefit to the consumers at the end. Higher quality animal products and ensuring that animal welfare standards are being met is a huge factor in this act. So, and I know Carrie also mentioned this in depth, the global competitiveness. There are consumers at different markets that have access to safe and effective food products. This would just give our own American consumers kind of a step up and really kind of level the playing field, both from a consumer standpoint in that sense. So I think that kind of summarizes very well. Scott, if you want to go ahead and kind of take the closing remarks of this and open things up to questions, I think it's good.
Perfect. Thank you all. I'm going to jump right into some questions that came in and that I have as we went through our presentation today. So with that, I'm going to go right into that. Some of the questions that came in, what is the industry perception of this bill? Like, do we have a feeling for that as we go through this?
Yeah, I'll take that, Scott. So based on all the feedback and conversations that I have been personally involved in, the feed ingredient and animal production segments are very much so in support of the Innovative Feed Act. This is definitely a hot topic within the industry. There are a lot of organizations, industry organizations that support the manufacturing of ingredients, manufacturing of feed products, all the way through end consumer markets. So your meat, your dairy, eggs, all of these different industry organizations are coming together and actively encouraging Congress to move this forward as quickly as possible. So overwhelmingly, I would say the feedback is very positive and people want to see this put into effect so we can get these products into the marketplace more quickly.
That makes sense. I mean, everything we talked about today seems like just a lot of positives. Are there any negative perceptions about this bill? Anything that people might be hesitant about?
You know, I think there's always, Leo, did you want to take that? Sorry.
No, no, you go ahead, Carrie. I mean, if I had anything to add to that, I mean, I think it's just really critical for the approval package, you know, and the understanding of which pathway to go down settled. I wouldn't say that there's a negative kind of side to this, except for making sure that the marketing claims are accurate, and that the product should function within the guidelines of the marketing claim.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. Again, I think it's all about perception. Change is, you know, welcomed, but change can also be scary sometimes. I think that our feed ingredient manufacturers, as well as our producers, the forefront of their thought process is, you know, still doing what's right and ensuring that the product that they're manufacturing is safe and that it does what it says it's supposed to. And so I think really based on what I've heard in the conversations I've been involved in, I really haven't heard much negative feedback or concern about outcomes of this bill. Overwhelmingly, it's been very, very positive, and I think that it's a necessary thing to continue to allow us to be competitive in the marketplace.
Okay, makes perfect sense. And so considering that, you know, heightened focus on, you know, marketing statements and whatnot, has this Feed Act shifted demand in testing? Are we seeing a lot of that, or shifts in certain testing requests or anything?
Leo, I see you're unmuted. Do you want to take this one, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, so immediately no, Scott. You know, there shouldn't be you know, increases or decreases expected from our perspective. I think in testing, you know, I think, you know, there are a lot of new technologies coming, you know, into view and actually into play in production facilities. You know, with you know, machine learning and machine vision, utilization of, you know, different types of AI products for predictive analysis. But beyond that, hopefully the goal here is to keep production, you know, as efficient as possible, and you should be getting an equivalent product, not one that is, you know, better or lower quality. It should be equivalent to what we're currently producing is the goal. We're just should be aiming to produce those more efficiently.
Makes sense. Okay, shifting over, you know, we talked a lot about you know, reduced pathogen levels and that from some of these food additives. How do feed additives improve pathogen safety for consumers?
Yeah, that's a good question, Scott. And I know I kind of briefly touched on it, but when we think about human pathogens such as E. coli and Salmonella, ones that pose risk for foodborne illnesses, a lot of times, and these specialized feed additives can reduce those amounts of those pathogens present in the animal before processing. And when you reduce the presence during the processing, you're therefore limiting the risk of pathogen spread once the animal has arrived at its processing destination, and therefore moving forward through the supply chain. In essence, a cleaner processing environments are kind of that first line of protection against biological cross-contamination, therefore hoping to protect the consumers on the back end.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I don't have a whole lot of questions beyond that. And so I suppose we can kind of close this off here. I did want to call your attention back to this slide here. If you did have more questions as you review this presentation, you can see we have our experts' contact information there. You can reach out directly with questions. I also want to say, you know, if you're planning on attending IPPE, you know, please reach out in advance if you're planning to attend and you know, connect with us, and you know, we can set up an appointment to discuss any of these topics further with you. So
we'll all be there. We'd be happy to talk about anything that you bring to us.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you, Leo. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Carrie. And thank you all for attending. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.